At my cousin's wedding reception, my Uncle Richard announced that his daughter would inherit the family law firm while pointing at me and saying, "Isabella here can barely speak proper English, so maybe she can find work translating for other immigrants." The room erupted in cruel laughter. What they didn't know was that the letter in my purse would soon make every single one of them eat their words. But let me start from the beginning of this journey that transformed family shame into professional triumph. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. My name is Isabella Esperanza Rodriguez, and for 28 years, I have carried the weight of two worlds on my shoulders. The daughter of Maria and Carlos Rodriguez, immigrants who arrived in Chicago from Guadalajara with nothing but determination and dreams wrapped in worn suitcases, I grew up straddling the line between my family's rich Mexican heritage and my American-born aspirations. The Rodriguez family story began in 1995, when my parents stepped off a Greyhound bus at Union Station, carrying me as a 6-month-old infant. My father had worked as a mechanical engineer in Mexico, but his credentials meant nothing in this new country. My mother had been a literature teacher, but her eloquent Spanish held no value in American classrooms. They settled in Pilsen, a neighborhood where Spanish flowed as freely as English, and began the exhausting process of rebuilding their professional lives from scratch. While my father took night shifts at a manufacturing plant and attended English classes during the day, my mother cleaned office buildings downtown, studying law books she found discarded in corporate wastebaskets. They spoke to me in Spanish at home, filling our small apartment with the melodic rhythms of their native tongue, the language that carried their stories, their wisdom, and their love. This was the foundation of who I became, though I would spend years learning to see it as a strength rather than a burden. The American education system proved to be my first battlefield. Despite being born in Chicago, my Spanish-accented English marked me as different from the moment I entered kindergarten. Teachers would speak to me slowly, assuming I could not understand complex instructions. Classmates would mimic my pronunciation, turning my heritage into a source of entertainment for their amusement. But my parents understood something that escaped my young comprehension at the time. Education would be my pathway to opportunities they had been denied. Every evening after their exhausting workdays, they would sit beside me at our kitchen table, helping me with homework they could barely read, encouraging me to excel in a language that still felt foreign on their tongues. The Rodriguez extended family in Chicago presented a complex web of relationships and expectations that would shape my understanding of success and belonging. My uncle Richard Rodriguez had arrived in the United States 10 years before my parents, and through a combination of luck, timing, and strategic marriages, had managed to establish himself as a successful immigration attorney. His daughter, my cousin Patricia, had grown up in the affluent suburb of Lincoln Park, attending private schools where her bilingual abilities were celebrated rather than mocked. Family gatherings became exercises in navigating unspoken hierarchies and subtle judgments. Uncle Richard would speak to my parents with the patronizing tone of someone who had made it, addressing those who were still struggling. His wife, Aunt Carmen, had learned to modulate her own accent to near invisibility, and she would look at my mother with thinly veiled disappointment when Maria's English stumbled over complex phrases. These dynamics created a painful awareness of how success was measured within our extended family. Professional achievement, particularly in law, represented the pinnacle of immigrant accomplishment. Uncle Richard never failed to remind everyone that his law office in the Loop served high-paying corporate clients, while his daughter Patricia was following in his footsteps, preparing for law school with all the advantages his success could provide. Despite the challenges, or perhaps because of them, I threw myself into academic achievement with the fierce determination that runs in Rodriguez blood. My elementary school teachers began to notice that the quiet girl with the slight accent possessed an exceptional analytical mind and an unusual ability to see patterns and connections that escaped her peers. By middle school, I had learned to code switch between my home Spanish and academic English with increasing fluency, though traces of my accent remained as persistent reminders of my origins. My parents celebrated every academic recognition, every honor roll certificate, every teacher's note praising my performance. Their pride was fierce and unconditional, even when they could not fully understand the subjects I was mastering. High school brought new opportunities and challenges. I qualified for advanced placement courses in literature, history, and government, where my bilingual perspective often provided insights that monolingual classmates could not access. The ability to think in two languages, to understand the nuances and cultural contexts that existed between Spanish and English communication, became an unexpected academic advantage. My guidance counselor, Mrs. Thompson, recognized potential that extended beyond test scores and grade point averages. She encouraged me to consider pre-law programs, noting my exceptional skills in research, writing, and logical argumentation. During our meetings, she would speak about law school as though it were an achievable destination rather than an impossible dream, planting seeds of ambition that would grow into unwavering determination. The college application process revealed both the extent of my academic achievements and the limitations of my family's resources. While my grades and standardized test scores qualified me for competitive universities, the financial reality meant that I would need substantial scholarship support to make higher education possible. My parents worked additional jobs to contribute what they could, but their contribution represented sacrifice rather than abundance. Northwestern University offered me a partial scholarship that made attendance possible, though it required me to work 20 hours per week in the campus library to cover remaining expenses. The prestigious campus in Evanston represented a world I had only imagined, where students discussed international politics over coffee, and professors treated complex ideas as casual conversation topics. The transition proved both exhilarating and isolating. My accent, which had faded somewhat during high school, seemed to resurface under the stress of new social dynamics. When I introduced myself to classmates or participated in seminar discussions, I could see their mental calculations as they processed my appearance, my name, and my speech patterns, filing me into categories that felt limiting and reductive. But the academic work revealed capabilities I had not fully understood about myself. Constitutional law fascinated me, particularly the intersections between individual rights and governmental power that directly impacted immigrant communities. Professor Williams, who taught my Introduction to Legal Studies course, noticed my unusual perspective on cases involving language rights and cultural accommodation. My undergraduate thesis examined the legal challenges faced by bilingual speakers in American courtrooms, a topic that allowed me to transform personal experience into academic expertise. The research process revealed how language discrimination operated within legal systems, often disadvantaging individuals whose primary offense was speaking English with an accent or requiring translation services. The work caught the attention of Professor Martinez, who directed the pre-law advisory program. She invited me to participate in mock trial competitions, where my ability to think strategically and communicate complex ideas clearly began to overshadow concerns about my accent. Judges and opposing teams learned to focus on the substance of my arguments rather than the sounds of my vowels. During my junior year, I participated in a summer internship at the Legal Aid Society, working with immigration attorneys who served low-income families facing deportation proceedings. The experience was transformative, showing me how legal expertise could serve as both sword and shield for vulnerable populations. I watched attorneys navigate complex regulations while advocating for clients whose stories resembled my parents' journey. The decision to attend law school crystallized during my senior year at Northwestern, though the path forward remained complicated by financial constraints and family expectations. My parents supported my ambitions with unwavering faith, but they worried about the debt burden and the years of continued education required before I could begin earning a stable income. Uncle Richard's response to my law school applications revealed the complex dynamics that would later explode at the family reunion. While he expressed superficial support for my educational pursuits, his comments carried subtle implications about the challenges I would face in professional legal environments, where communication skills and cultural fit often determined success. During a family dinner that spring, he made what he considered helpful observations about the legal profession's demands. He suggested that I might want to consider specializing in immigration law or family services, areas where my background might be seen as an asset rather than a limitation. His tone suggested that corporate law, constitutional litigation, or appellate practice would be inappropriate matches for someone with my linguistic characteristics. The conversation was painful, not because of its obvious condescension, but because it reflected assumptions about my capabilities that extended far beyond professional concerns. Uncle Richard was essentially arguing that my accent and cultural background made me suitable only for serving other immigrants, rather than competing in mainstream legal markets. My cousin Patricia, who was completing her first year at Northwestern's law school, participated in these conversations with the casual confidence of someone who had never questioned her right to occupy any professional space. She discussed her internship at a prestigious downtown firm, her networking opportunities with established attorneys, and her plans to specialize in corporate transactions as though these pathways were naturally accessible to her. The contrast between Patricia's assumed entitlement and the limitations others projected onto my future created a burning determination to prove that excellence could transcend accent and background. I would not allow others' limited imagination about my potential to define the scope of my achievements. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The University of Chicago Law School acceptance letter arrived on a cold February morning, accompanied by a generous scholarship package that made attendance financially viable. The institution's reputation for rigorous intellectual challenge and its emphasis on legal theory aligned perfectly with my academic strengths and professional aspirations. The first-year curriculum proved demanding in ways that transcended academic difficulty. Constitutional law, contracts, torts, and criminal procedure required not just memorization of legal principles, but the development of legal reasoning skills that would allow me to analyze complex factual situations and apply appropriate legal frameworks. My contracts professor, Professor Chen, established a classroom environment where precision in language and argumentation was paramount. Students were expected to articulate legal concepts with exactness, to distinguish between similar but distinct legal principles, and to defend their reasoning against challenging hypotheticals. The rigor was intimidating, but it played to intellectual strengths I had been developing since childhood. During the first semester, I noticed that my accent occasionally prompted classmates to assume I might struggle with the demanding reading load or complex legal writing requirements. These assumptions proved to be significant underestimations of my capabilities. My undergraduate preparation in research and analysis, combined with the linguistic precision required for legal writing, allowed me to excel in courses that challenged many of my peers. The law review competition took place during the spring semester, requiring students to write a substantial legal analysis piece under tight deadlines while managing their regular coursework load. The topic I chose examined the constitutional implications of language discrimination in professional licensing examinations, drawing on both legal precedent and empirical research about bias in standardized testing. The piece was selected for publication, making me one of the youngest students ever to appear in the University of Chicago Law Review. Professor Martinez, who served on the editorial board, noted that my analysis brought a fresh perspective to questions that had been debated in legal circles for decades, without adequate consideration of the actual impact on affected communities. The summer after my first year of law school, I secured a competitive internship at Morrison Wesley & Associates, a boutique firm specializing in constitutional litigation and appellate advocacy. The firm's reputation for taking on complex cases involving civil rights and governmental accountability aligned with my developing interests in using legal expertise to address systemic inequalities. Senior partner James Morrison assigned me to research projects that would typically be handled by second-year law students, testing my analytical capabilities on cases involving First Amendment protections, due process rights, and equal protection challenges. The work required me to synthesize information from multiple jurisdictions, identify relevant precedents, and draft memoranda that would inform the firm's litigation strategies. My research on a case involving language rights in courtroom proceedings caught Morrison's particular attention. The client was a Spanish-speaking defendant whose conviction had been compromised by inadequate translation services, and my analysis revealed both procedural violations and constitutional issues that provided grounds for appellate relief. Morrison invited me to participate in the brief writing process, contributing sections that addressed the intersection between language discrimination and due process rights. The experience of crafting legal arguments for review by federal appellate judges was both thrilling and intimidating, requiring precision in legal reasoning and clarity in written communication that would withstand scrutiny from some of the nation's most experienced legal minds. The case ultimately succeeded on appeal, with the court adopting several arguments I had researched and developed. Morrison made a point of acknowledging my contribution during the firm's celebration, noting that my unique perspective had strengthened their advocacy in ways that would not have been possible without my involvement. This success opened doors to additional opportunities within the firm, including the chance to observe oral arguments before the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals, and to participate in client meetings where my bilingual capabilities proved valuable for serving Spanish-speaking clients facing constitutional challenges. My second year of law school brought increased recognition for academic achievement and practical legal skills. I was elected to serve as an executive editor for the Law Review, a position that required me to oversee the publication process for scholarly articles, while managing a team of student editors working on complex legal research projects. The role demanded leadership capabilities, organizational skills, and the ability to maintain publication standards while working with authors, professors, and legal practitioners who submitted work for consideration. My supervisory responsibilities included reviewing submissions, coordinating peer review processes, and ensuring that published articles met the rigorous standards expected of a top-tier law review. Professor Anderson, who taught advanced constitutional law, invited me to serve as a teaching assistant for her undergraduate constitutional studies course. The position required me to lead discussion sections, grade examinations, and hold office hours, where students could seek clarification on complex constitutional principles and landmark Supreme Court decisions. Working with undergraduate students provided valuable experience in legal education while allowing me to develop teaching and mentoring skills. Many of the students I worked with were considering law school themselves, and my guidance helped them understand both the challenges and opportunities of legal education. The moot court competition during my second year focused on a case involving immigration enforcement and constitutional protections for non-citizens. My team's brief and oral argument earned first place in the regional competition, qualifying us for the national championships where we would compete against teams from law schools across the country. The national competition required us to argue both sides of the constitutional question before panels of federal judges and practicing attorneys. My performance during oral arguments drew particular praise from the judges, who noted the clarity of my legal reasoning and my ability to respond effectively to challenging questions about constitutional interpretation and practical implementation of legal principles. By my third year of law school, the transformation in my professional identity was becoming apparent to everyone around me. The uncertain first-year student who had worried about fitting into prestigious legal environments had evolved into a confident advocate who could hold her own in any intellectual or professional setting. My reputation within the law school community was established through consistent academic excellence, leadership in extracurricular activities, and the respect of professors who recognized my analytical capabilities and professional potential. Classmates who had initially made assumptions about my background now sought my perspective on complex legal questions and my collaboration on challenging projects. The job search process during my final year revealed the extent of the opportunities my academic performance had created. Major law firms in Chicago, New York, and Washington, D.C. extended interview invitations, recognizing the value of my law review experience, academic achievements, and unique background in constitutional litigation. But the opportunity that would ultimately define my career path came through an unexpected connection. Professor Morrison, my former internship supervisor, had maintained contact throughout law school and was aware of my academic progress and professional development. He contacted me during the fall semester with information about a judicial clerkship opportunity that he believed would be perfect for my interests and capabilities. The Honorable Justice Sarah Williams of the United States Court of Appeals for the Seventh Circuit was seeking a law clerk with experience in constitutional litigation and strong research and writing skills. Morrison had worked with Justice Williams on several cases and believed my background and abilities would make me an excellent candidate for the prestigious position. Judicial clerkships represent the pinnacle of legal education experiences, providing recent law school graduates with the opportunity to work directly with federal judges on cases that shape legal precedent and constitutional interpretation. The competition for these positions is intense, with candidates evaluated based on academic achievement, legal writing ability, and recommendations from respected members of the legal profession. The interview process with Justice Williams, was both challenging and inspiring. She asked penetrating questions about constitutional theory, legal precedent, and my perspective on the role of federal courts in protecting individual rights. Our conversation revealed shared interests in using legal institutions to address systemic inequalities and protect vulnerable populations from governmental overreach. When Justice Williams offered me the clerkship position, she made specific mention of the value she saw in my background and perspective. She noted that the court benefited from having clerks who understood the real-world impact of legal decisions on diverse communities and who could bring fresh insights to complex constitutional questions. Throughout law school, family relationships remained complicated by the same dynamics that had shaped my childhood understanding of success and belonging. Uncle Richard continued to treat my academic achievements as somewhat surprising, offering praise that carried undertones of amazement that someone with my background had managed to excel in such demanding environments. Family gatherings became increasingly uncomfortable as my professional trajectory began to diverge dramatically from the expectations others had held for my future. When I announced my acceptance of the federal clerkship, Uncle Richard's response was characteristically patronizing, suggesting that the position would provide valuable experience that might help me eventually establish a small practice serving immigrant communities. His assumption that my career would naturally be limited to immigration law or community service reflected persistent beliefs about the appropriate professional boundaries for someone with my accent and background. The idea that I might compete successfully in mainstream legal markets, argue cases before federal appellate courts, or develop expertise in constitutional law seemed to exceed his imagination about my potential. My cousin Patricia, who had secured a position at a mid-sized firm handling corporate transactions, began to express subtle competitiveness about our respective career paths. Her comments about my clerkship carried implications that judicial positions were academic rather than practical, suitable for students who preferred research to real legal practice. These family dynamics created additional motivation for professional excellence, though the drive came from a desire to prove my capabilities rather than seek approval from those who had consistently underestimated my potential. The federal clerkship represented an opportunity to demonstrate that accent and background were irrelevant to legal ability and professional achievement. The approaching family reunion, which would celebrate Uncle Richard's 60th birthday and Patricia's recent engagement, promised to be another venue for the subtle competitions and comparisons that had characterized our extended family relationships throughout my life. What they did not know was that during my clerkship year, I had been working on something that would fundamentally change both my career trajectory and their understanding of what I had achieved. But that revelation would have to wait for the perfect moment, when their own assumptions about my limitations would create the ideal opportunity for a demonstration of exactly what Isabella Rodriguez had become. The stage was set for a confrontation that would forever change how my family understood success, capability, and the true meaning of speaking with authority in American legal institutions. The laughter that had followed me throughout childhood was about to be replaced by a very different kind of recognition. The marble corridors of the Everett McKinley Dirksen United States Courthouse in Chicago represented everything I had worked toward since my undergraduate years at Northwestern. Walking through those halls on my first morning as a judicial clerk to the Honorable Justice, Sarah Williams felt like crossing a threshold between the aspirations I had carried throughout law school and the professional reality I was finally prepared to inhabit. Justice Williams commanded respect throughout the federal judiciary for her incisive legal mind and her commitment to constitutional principles that protected individual rights while respecting institutional boundaries. Her chambers operated with the precise efficiency of a legal research laboratory where every case received exhaustive analysis and every decision was grounded in thorough examination of precedent, statutory language, and constitutional interpretation. My role as her law clerk required me to conduct initial research on pending cases, draft memoranda analyzing legal issues and procedural questions, and prepare comprehensive briefing materials that would inform her decision-making process. The responsibility was both thrilling and intimidating, knowing that my research and analysis would directly influence judicial decisions that could establish binding precedent for future cases throughout the Seventh Circuit. The cases that came before Justice Williams represented the full spectrum of federal appellate jurisdiction, from complex commercial disputes involving multi-million-dollar transactions to constitutional challenges that would determine the scope of individual rights and governmental authority. Each case demanded precise legal analysis that could withstand scrutiny from the legal community, academic scholars, and potentially the Supreme Court, if further review were sought. My first major assignment involved researching a case that challenged municipal language policies affecting public services for non-English-speaking residents. The legal questions centered on whether local government requirements for English-only communications violated constitutional principles of equal protection and due process, issues that resonated deeply with my personal experience, while demanding objective legal analysis that transcended individual perspective. The research process revealed the intersection between constitutional theory and practical governance in ways that law school coursework had only suggested. Municipal defendants argued that English-only policies promoted administrative efficiency and encouraged assimilation, while plaintiffs contended that such requirements created discriminatory barriers to essential public services for vulnerable populations. Justice Williams assigned me to examine precedent from other circuits, addressing similar challenges, analyze the constitutional standards that courts had applied to language discrimination claims, and evaluate the strength of arguments on both sides of the dispute. The assignment required me to synthesize complex legal materials while maintaining the analytical objectivity essential to effective judicial decision-making. Working directly with Justice Williams provided insights into judicial reasoning that extended far beyond academic understanding of constitutional law. Her approach to legal analysis emphasized careful attention to factual details, rigorous examination of precedential authority, and consideration of the broader implications that individual decisions might have for future cases and legal development. The demands of federal judicial clerkship accelerated my professional development in ways that law school had prepared but could not fully simulate. Each day required me to analyze complex legal materials, synthesize information from multiple sources, and communicate findings through written memoranda that met the exacting standards of federal appellate practice. Justice Williams established clear expectations for the quality of research and analysis that her chambers would produce. Legal memoranda needed to be comprehensive in scope, precise in legal reasoning, and clear in presentation to serve their intended purpose of informing judicial decision-making on cases that could establish binding precedent throughout the circuit. The writing process demanded skills that transcended traditional legal education, requiring me to translate complex constitutional principles into accessible analysis while maintaining the precision necessary for judicial decision-making. Every sentence needed to be defensible under scrutiny, every citation needed to be accurate and relevant, and every conclusion needed to be supported by thorough examination of applicable authority. My background in bilingual communication proved unexpectedly valuable in this demanding environment. The analytical skills required for code switching between languages, understanding cultural context and communication nuances, and synthesizing information from diverse sources translated directly into the legal research and writing skills that effective judicial clerkship demanded. Justice Williams began assigning me increasingly complex research projects as my capabilities became apparent. Cases involving constitutional challenges to federal immigration enforcement policies required analysis of statutory interpretation, administrative law principles, and constitutional protections that intersected in ways that demanded sophisticated legal reasoning and comprehensive understanding of multiple areas of federal law. The opportunity to observe oral arguments before the Seventh Circuit provided additional insights into appellate advocacy and judicial decision-making. Watching experienced attorneys present their cases before panels of federal judges revealed the strategic considerations that shaped effective legal argument and the analytical process that judges employed when evaluating competing legal theories. My presence in the courtroom during these proceedings allowed me to observe how Justice Williams and her colleagues approached complex legal questions, the types of inquiries that influenced their thinking, and the standards they applied when evaluating the persuasiveness of legal arguments presented by experienced appellate advocates. The experience was transformative in ways that extended beyond professional skill development. Participating directly in the federal judicial process while contributing meaningful research and analysis to actual case decisions provided concrete validation of capabilities that family members had consistently questioned or dismissed throughout my academic journey. Justice Williams recognized my particular strengths in constitutional analysis and began assigning cases that would allow me to develop specialized expertise in areas of federal law that aligned with both my academic background and professional interests. First Amendment cases involving freedom of speech and religious liberty required research that examined the historical development of constitutional protections alongside contemporary applications to modern legal disputes. One significant case involved a constitutional challenge to municipal restrictions on multilingual signage in commercial districts, raising questions about the intersection between First Amendment speech protections and local government authority to regulate business communications. The legal issues required me to examine precedent addressing commercial speech, content-based restrictions on expression, and the constitutional standards that courts applied when evaluating government regulations that affected linguistic diversity. My research revealed that courts had struggled to develop consistent approaches to language-related speech restrictions, with different circuits applying varying levels of constitutional scrutiny depending on their interpretation of the governmental interests involved and the impact on affected speech. This inconsistency created opportunities for the Seventh Circuit to provide clarifying guidance that could influence how similar cases were decided throughout federal appellate courts. Justice Williams encouraged me to examine the case from multiple analytical perspectives, considering not only the immediate legal questions, but also the broader constitutional principles that were at stake and the potential implications that the court's decision might have for future cases involving language rights and commercial expression. The analysis required me to synthesize materials from constitutional law, administrative regulation, municipal governance, and First Amendment jurisprudence to develop a comprehensive understanding of the legal landscape that the court would need to navigate when reaching its decision. The complexity demanded research skills and analytical capabilities that few law students develop during traditional academic programs. Due process cases involving procedural protections for individuals facing administrative enforcement actions provided additional opportunities to develop expertise in constitutional law applications. These cases required analyses of the procedural safeguards that the Constitution requires government agencies to provide when their actions affect individual rights or interests. My background understanding of the practical challenges faced by individuals navigating complex bureaucratic systems provided valuable perspective for analyzing whether existing procedural protections adequately served their constitutional purpose of ensuring fair treatment and preventing arbitrary governmental action. Justice Williams noted that my analysis consistently identified practical implications and real-world consequences that other researchers might overlook, contributing perspective that strengthened the court's understanding of how legal principles operated in practice rather than merely in theoretical constitutional analysis. The opportunity to contribute to actual judicial opinions required mastery of legal writing skills that exceeded traditional law school instruction, in both precision and practical application. Federal appellate decisions needed to communicate complex legal reasoning clearly, while establishing precedent that lower courts and future panels could apply consistently to similar legal questions. Justice Williams assigned me to draft sections of opinions addressing constitutional issues that required careful explanation of legal principles, thorough examination of precedential authority, and clear articulation of the reasoning that supported the court's conclusions. The writing process demanded accuracy that could withstand scrutiny from appellate attorneys, academic scholars, and potentially reviewing courts. My first opportunity to contribute substantially to a published judicial opinion involved a case examining the constitutional requirements for language accommodation in federal administrative proceedings. The legal questions required analysis of due process protections, statutory interpretation of federal language access requirements, and practical considerations about implementation of constitutional mandates in diverse governmental contexts. The opinion section I drafted examined precedent from other circuits addressing similar constitutional questions, analyzed the applicable legal standards for evaluating due process claims, and articulated the reasoning that supported the court's conclusion about the procedural protections required in the specific factual context presented by the case. Justice Williams provided detailed feedback on multiple drafts, emphasizing the importance of precision in legal language, clarity in logical progression, and comprehensiveness in addressing potential counter-arguments or alternative interpretations that reviewing courts might consider. The revision process was intensive, but invaluable for developing the advanced legal writing skills essential for appellate practice. The published opinion incorporated my research and analysis, while reflecting Justice Williams' judicial philosophy and approach to constitutional interpretation. Seeing my legal reasoning and analysis contribute to binding federal precedent provided professional validation that transcended any recognition I had received during law school or academic achievement. Legal scholars and practitioners who commented on the decision in professional publications noted the opinion's thorough analysis and clear articulation of constitutional principles, praise that reflected the quality of research and writing that Justice Williams demanded from her chambers, and that I had been privileged to contribute. The experience of contributing to federal appellate precedent while working under the supervision of a respected federal judge provided professional credentials and practical experience that would distinguish me from other recent law school graduates when I eventually entered private practice or pursued other legal career opportunities. Working in Justice Williams' chambers provided access to a professional network that extended throughout the federal judiciary, academic legal community, and appellate bar practicing before federal courts. The relationships developed during my clerkship year would prove invaluable for future career advancement and professional development. Regular interaction with attorneys arguing cases before the Seventh Circuit allowed me to observe the highest levels of appellate advocacy, while building recognition within the community of practitioners who specialized in federal constitutional litigation. These attorneys represented major law firms, public interest organizations, and governmental entities, providing exposure to the full spectrum of legal practice at the appellate level. Several prominent appellate attorneys who appeared regularly before Justice Williams began to recognize the quality of legal analysis coming from her chambers and expressed interest in discussing potential career opportunities with clerks who had contributed to significant decisions. These informal conversations provided insights into different career paths available to clerks with strong research and writing capabilities. Academic conferences focusing on constitutional law and federal court practice provided additional opportunities for professional development and network expansion. Justice Williams encouraged my attendance at scholarly symposiums, where federal judges, law professors, and practitioners discussed current developments in constitutional jurisprudence and federal appellate practice. My presentations at these academic gatherings, discussing research findings from cases I had worked on during my clerkship, attracted attention from law school faculty members, practicing attorneys, and other federal law clerks who recognized the sophistication of my legal analysis and communication skills. The professional relationships developed through these academic and practice-oriented connections created opportunities for future collaboration and career advancement that would not have been available through traditional law school networking or entry-level legal positions. Justice Williams herself served as an invaluable mentor and professional reference, providing guidance about career development while offering insights into the legal profession that could only come from someone who had observed legal practice from the unique perspective of federal judicial service. Her recommendation and endorsement would carry significant weight with potential employers, whether in private practice, government service, or academic positions, providing professional credibility that would distinguish me from other candidates competing for prestigious legal opportunities. By the midpoint of my clerkship year, my specialized expertise in constitutional law, particularly in areas involving language rights and procedural due process, had become recognized within Justice Williams' chambers and among attorneys practicing before the Seventh Circuit. This specialization would prove crucial for my future career development and professional positioning. Complex cases involving First Amendment protections for multilingual expression required research that drew upon my understanding of both constitutional principles and practical challenges faced by diverse linguistic communities. My ability to analyze these issues from multiple perspectives while maintaining legal objectivity distinguished my work from more conventional constitutional analysis. Justice Williams began requesting my research input on cases that other chambers were handling, recognizing that my background and analytical approach provided valuable insights that could strengthen the court's collective understanding of constitutional issues affecting linguistic diversity and procedural fairness. Academic law journals began requesting articles based on research I had conducted during my clerkship, providing opportunities to contribute to scholarly discourse about constitutional interpretation and federal court practice. These publications would establish my credibility within academic legal communities while demonstrating research capabilities to potential employers. Speaking engagements at Bar Association conferences and continuing legal education programs allowed me to share insights about federal appellate practice, while building recognition among attorneys who might later provide career opportunities or professional collaboration. These presentations showcased both legal expertise and communication skills to audiences of experienced practitioners. The combination of practical experience, academic recognition, and professional networking created a foundation for career advancement that exceeded what most recent law school graduates could achieve through traditional entry-level positions. The clerkship provided both substantive legal experience and professional credibility that would support advanced career opportunities. Justice Williams' mentorship extended beyond immediate clerkship responsibilities to include guidance about long-term career planning and professional development. Her insights into different legal career paths, combined with introductions to influential members of the legal profession, created opportunities that would shape my professional trajectory for years to come. The professional recognition and validation I received during my federal clerkship created a transformation in personal confidence that extended far beyond legal career considerations. Working at the highest levels of federal judicial practice while contributing meaningfully to constitutional jurisprudence provided concrete evidence of capabilities that family members had consistently questioned or underestimated. The contrast between family assumptions about my professional limitations and the reality of my federal judicial service became increasingly apparent as my clerkship year progressed. While Uncle Richard continued to suggest that my accent might limit my effectiveness in mainstream legal practice, I was contributing to federal appellate decisions that would influence constitutional interpretation throughout the Seventh Circuit. My cousin Patricia's corporate law position, while professionally respectable, involved transactional work that would never receive the public recognition or precedential significance of the constitutional cases I was researching and analyzing. The comparison highlighted how family members' understanding of legal career hierarchy failed to recognize the prestige and importance of federal judicial service. The professional relationships I developed during my clerkship provided perspective on how accomplished attorneys and federal judges evaluated legal capability and professional potential. Their assessment focused entirely on analytical skills, legal reasoning ability, and quality of work product, without regard to accent, background, or other characteristics that family members seem to consider relevant to professional success. Justice Williams' confidence in my capabilities, demonstrated through increasingly complex research assignments and opportunities to contribute to significant judicial decisions, provided validation from someone whose opinion carried tremendous weight within the legal profession. Her mentorship and professional endorsement represented recognition from the highest levels of federal judicial service. The experience of working directly with federal appellate cases while contributing to binding legal precedent created professional confidence that would support any future career challenge or opportunity. The knowledge that I had already succeeded at the most demanding levels of legal practice provided security that no external validation or approval could match. My parents' pride in my federal judicial service was profound and unconditional, though they could not fully comprehend the significance of the position within professional legal hierarchies. Their support remained grounded in love and faith rather than understanding of professional achievement, providing emotional foundation that transcended career considerations. As my clerkship year progressed toward completion, the question of future career direction required careful consideration of the various opportunities that my federal judicial experience had created. The professional recognition and specialized expertise I had developed opened doors to career paths that would not have been accessible directly from law school graduation. Major law firms specializing in appellate practice and constitutional litigation expressed interest in recruiting clerks from Justice Williams' chambers, recognizing the quality of training and experience that her demanding standards provided. These firms handled complex federal cases involving constitutional challenges, regulatory disputes, and appellate advocacy that aligned with my developing expertise and professional interests. Public interest organizations focused on civil rights and constitutional advocacy also provided compelling career opportunities that would allow me to use legal expertise in service of communities facing constitutional violations or governmental overreach. These positions offered the possibility of directly applying my specialized knowledge to advance justice for vulnerable populations. Academic opportunities included teaching positions at law schools seeking faculty members with practical federal court experience and specialized expertise in constitutional law. Several law professors had noted my research capabilities and suggested that academic legal careers might provide platforms for continuing the scholarly work I had begun during my clerkship. Government service offered additional possibilities, including positions with the Department of Justice or other federal agencies that required attorneys with constitutional law expertise and federal court experience. These opportunities would provide chances to shape legal policy while serving broader public interests. The decision process required consideration of personal values, professional objectives, and long-term career goals that extended beyond immediate financial or prestige considerations. Justice Williams provided guidance about different career paths, while emphasizing the importance of choosing opportunities that would utilize my unique capabilities, while advancing professional objectives that aligned with personal commitment to justice and constitutional principles. Family considerations remained complicated by persistent assumptions about appropriate professional boundaries for someone with my background. Uncle Richard continued to suggest that I should focus on immigration law or community legal services, apparently unable to recognize that my federal judicial experience had qualified me for opportunities at the highest levels of legal practice. The contrast between family expectations and actual professional opportunities available to me created additional motivation to demonstrate capabilities through career choices that would definitively establish my position within mainstream legal practice, rather than the limited roles others had envisioned for my future. The comparison highlighted how family members' understanding of legal career hierarchy failed to recognize the prestige and importance of federal judicial service. The professional relationships I developed during my clerkship provided perspective on how accomplished attorneys and federal judges evaluated legal capability and professional potential. Their assessment focused entirely on analytical skills, legal reasoning ability, and quality of work product, without regard to accent, background, or other characteristics that family members seemed to consider relevant to professional success. Justice Williams' confidence in my capabilities, demonstrated through increasingly complex research assignments and opportunities to contribute to significant judicial decisions, provided validation from someone whose opinion carried tremendous weight within the legal profession. Her mentorship and professional endorsement represented recognition from the highest levels of federal judicial service. The experience of working directly with federal appellate cases while contributing to binding legal precedent created professional confidence that would support any future career challenge or opportunity. The knowledge that I had already succeeded at the most demanding levels of legal practice provided security that no external validation or approval could match. My parents' pride in my federal judicial service was profound and unconditional, though they could not fully comprehend the significance of the position within professional legal hierarchies. Their support remained grounded in love and faith rather than understanding of professional achievement, providing emotional foundation that transcended career considerations. As my clerkship year progressed toward completion, the question of future career direction required careful consideration of the various opportunities that my federal judicial experience had created. The professional recognition and specialized expertise I had developed opened doors to career paths that would not have been accessible directly from law school graduation. Major law firms specializing in appellate practice and constitutional litigation expressed interest in recruiting clerks from Justice Williams' chambers, recognizing the quality of training and experience that her demanding standards provided. These firms handled complex federal cases involving constitutional challenges, regulatory disputes, and appellate advocacy that aligned with my developing expertise and professional interests. Public interest organizations focused on civil rights and constitutional advocacy also provided compelling career opportunities that would allow me to use legal expertise in service of communities facing constitutional violations or governmental overreach. These positions offered the possibility of directly applying my specialized knowledge to advance justice for vulnerable populations. Academic opportunities included teaching positions at law schools seeking faculty members with practical federal court experience and specialized expertise in constitutional law. Several law professors had noted my research capabilities and suggested that academic legal careers might provide platforms for continuing the scholarly work I had begun during my clerkship. Government service offered additional possibilities, including positions with the Department of Justice or other federal agencies that required attorneys with constitutional law expertise and federal court experience. These opportunities would provide chances to shape legal policy while serving broader public interests. The decision process required consideration of personal values, professional objectives, and long-term career goals that extended beyond immediate financial or prestige considerations. Justice Williams provided guidance about different career paths, while emphasizing the importance of choosing opportunities that would utilize my unique capabilities, while advancing professional objectives that aligned with personal commitment to justice and constitutional principles. Family considerations remained complicated by persistent assumptions about appropriate professional boundaries for someone with my background. Uncle Richard continued to suggest that I should focus on immigration law or community legal services, apparently unable to recognize that my federal judicial experience had qualified me for opportunities at the highest levels of legal practice. The contrast between family expectations and actual professional opportunities available to me created additional motivation to demonstrate capabilities through career choices that would definitively establish my position within mainstream legal practice, rather than the limited roles others had envisioned for my future. Throughout my clerkship year, I had been accumulating professional achievements and recognition that would soon surprise family members who continued to underestimate my capabilities and career trajectory. Each successful research project, each published judicial opinion that incorporated my analysis, and each professional relationship developed through federal court service contributed to credentials that exceeded anything they imagined I had accomplished. The letter that would soon shock my family at the upcoming reunion represented the culmination of this hidden achievement accumulation. While they assumed I was serving in a temporary academic position that would eventually lead to community legal services, I had actually been building expertise and recognition that qualified me for opportunities at the pinnacle of legal practice. Justice Williams had begun discussing potential career recommendations and professional introductions that would support my transition from judicial service to private practice or other advanced legal career opportunities. Her endorsement carried weight throughout the federal legal community and would open doors that most attorneys spend years trying to access. Professional organizations focused on constitutional law and appellate practice had begun recognizing my contributions to legal scholarship and federal court practice through speaking invitations, publication opportunities, and leadership positions that reflected growing reputation within specialized legal communities. The awards and recognition I had received during law school, combined with the specialized expertise and professional relationships developed during my federal clerkship, created a portfolio of achievements that positioned me among the most accomplished recent law school graduates entering the legal profession. Family members remained unaware of these developments, continuing to base their expectations on assumptions about my limitations rather than recognition of actual achievements and capabilities. Their surprise at the upcoming family reunion would reflect the gap between their limited imagination about my potential and the reality of what I had accomplished through focused effort and strategic career development. The stage was being set for a revelation that would forever change how my extended family understood both my capabilities and the appropriate boundaries of their assumptions about professional achievement and cultural identity. The laughter that had followed my accent throughout family gatherings was about to be replaced by a very different kind of recognition and respect. The Rodriguez family dynamics operated according to an unspoken hierarchy that had solidified over decades of immigration, assimilation, and varying degrees of professional success. Understanding these complex relationships required careful analysis of the cultural expectations, economic pressures, and social positioning that influenced every family interaction and shaped individual opportunities within the extended family network. Uncle Richard Rodriguez occupied the apex of this family structure through his successful immigration law practice and his strategic positioning as the family member who had most effectively navigated American professional institutions. His authority extended beyond mere financial success to encompass cultural interpretations, serving as the unofficial arbiter of appropriate professional aspirations and acceptable levels of assimilation for younger family members. Richard's law firm, Rodriguez and Associates, operated from prestigious offices in Chicago's Loop District and represented a diverse clientele that included both individual immigration cases and corporate clients requiring expertise in employment-based visa procedures. His professional success provided him with social capital that extended throughout the broader Latino community in Chicago, creating influence that reached far beyond immediate family relationships. The firm's reputation had been built through decades of competent legal representation, combined with strategic community involvement that positioned Richard as a spokesperson for Latino professional achievement. His frequent appearances at community events, professional conferences, and political gatherings reinforced his status as someone who had successfully transcended the limitations typically associated with immigrant background while maintaining cultural authenticity. Aunt Carmen Rodriguez had played a crucial supporting role in this professional elevation through her own career in education administration and her careful cultivation of social relationships within Chicago's professional Latino community. Her involvement in charitable organizations and cultural institutions provided additional legitimacy to the family's claims of successful assimilation, while preserving essential cultural connections. The couple's approach to family leadership involved constant evaluation and subtle direction of younger family members' career choices, educational decisions, and professional development. Their guidance carried the authority of demonstrated success, combined with intimate understanding of the challenges facing Latino professionals in competitive American institutions. My cousin Patricia represented the next generation of this family success story, having been positioned from childhood to inherit both professional opportunities and cultural expectations that would continue the family's trajectory of achievement and influence. Her educational path through private schools and prestigious universities had been carefully orchestrated to maximize her competitive advantages while minimizing potential obstacles. Patricia's engagement to Michael Chen, a successful investment banker whose family had also navigated complex immigration and assimilation challenges, represented strategic alliance building that would extend the family's professional network while maintaining appropriate cultural balance. The relationship demonstrated sophisticated understanding of how personal choices could advance broader family objectives. This elaborate family structure created specific expectations and limitations for my own professional development that extended far beyond simple career guidance. My role within this hierarchy had been predetermined based on assumptions about my capabilities, appropriate professional boundaries, and the most effective ways to utilize whatever limited talents family members attributed to my potential. Chicago's legal community operated according to its own complex hierarchy that intersected with but remained distinct from family expectations and cultural positioning. Understanding this professional landscape required analysis of the institutional structures, informal networks, and competitive dynamics that influenced career advancement and professional recognition within different areas of legal practice. The federal court system represented the pinnacle of legal institutional prestige, with judicial clerkships providing access to professional networks and credibility that exceeded what most attorneys achieved through decades of private practice. Federal judges commanded respect throughout the legal community that transcended specific practice areas or client relationships, creating opportunities for their law clerks that would not be available through traditional career paths. Justice Williams' position within this judicial hierarchy was particularly significant due to her reputation for rigorous legal analysis and her influence on constitutional law development throughout the Seventh Circuit. Attorneys who practiced appellate law recognized the quality of training that clerks from her chambers received and the competitive advantages that such experience provided for future career advancement. The appellate bar that practiced before federal courts represented a specialized segment of the legal profession that required exceptional research capabilities, sophisticated legal writing skills, and comprehensive understanding of constitutional and federal statutory interpretation. These attorneys handled complex cases that often established binding precedent and influenced legal development across multiple jurisdictions. Major law firms that specialized in appellate practice and constitutional litigation actively recruited clerks from prestigious federal judicial chambers, recognizing the value of training and experience that such positions provided. These recruitment efforts created career opportunities that bypassed traditional entry-level positions, while providing immediate access to sophisticated legal work and prestigious client relationships. Public interest organizations focused on constitutional advocacy and civil rights litigation represented alternative career paths that attracted clerks with specialized expertise in federal court practice and constitutional interpretation. These positions offered opportunities to apply legal skills in service of broader social objectives, while maintaining the intellectual challenge and professional prestige associated with complex federal litigation. Academic institutions sought faculty members with practical federal court experience and proven research capabilities, creating opportunities for clerks to transition from judicial service to legal education and scholarly research. These positions provided platforms for continued contribution to legal development through teaching, scholarship, and participation in academic conferences and professional organizations. Government service offered additional career possibilities for attorneys with federal court experience and constitutional law expertise, including positions with the Department of Justice and other federal agencies that required sophisticated legal analysis and appellate advocacy capabilities. These opportunities provided chances to influence legal policy development while serving broader public interests. The competitive dynamics within this professional landscape rewarded demonstrated excellence in legal analysis, proven writing capabilities, and established relationships within the federal legal community. Success required not only technical legal skills but also strategic career positioning and professional networking that could support continued advancement and opportunity creation. Navigating between family expectations and professional requirements demanded sophisticated cultural code switching that extended far beyond simple linguistic considerations to encompass fundamental differences in values, priorities, and definitions of appropriate professional behavior. These cultural negotiations required constant attention to context, audience, and strategic positioning that could honor family relationships while advancing professional objectives. Family gatherings operated according to cultural norms that emphasized collective identity, mutual support, and respect for established authority figures who had demonstrated successful navigation of American professional institutions. These expectations created pressure to seek approval and guidance from Uncle Richard and other successful family members, rather than asserting independent professional judgment or pursuing opportunities that exceeded their understanding or approval. The professional legal environment demanded confidence, assertiveness, and independent analytical thinking that could sometimes conflict with cultural expectations about appropriate deference to established authority and collective decision-making processes. Success in federal court practice required individual excellence and strategic positioning that might appear inconsistent with cultural values that prioritized family harmony and collective advancement. Language considerations remained complex despite my fluency in professional legal English and proven capabilities in sophisticated legal writing and oral advocacy. Family members continued to focus on accent characteristics that they associated with limited professional potential, apparently unable to recognize that clients, judges, and colleagues in federal practice evaluated capability based entirely on legal competence rather than pronunciation patterns. Professional settings provided validation and recognition based on demonstrated capability that contrasted sharply with family environments, where assumptions about limitations and appropriate boundaries continued to influence how others evaluated my potential and achievements. This divergence created cognitive dissonance that required careful management to maintain both family relationships and professional advancement. The intersection between cultural identity and professional excellence demanded strategic navigation that could preserve authentic cultural connections while demonstrating capabilities that exceeded family members' limited imagination about appropriate career boundaries for someone with my background and characteristics. Justice Williams and other federal court professionals provided mentorship and guidance that focused entirely on legal capability and professional potential without reference to cultural background or linguistic characteristics. Their evaluation criteria emphasized analytical skills, legal reasoning ability, and quality of work product in ways that provided clear feedback about professional performance and advancement opportunities. This professional validation created increasing confidence in my own judgment about career decisions and professional positioning, reducing dependence on family approval while maintaining respect for cultural values and relationships that remained important for personal identity and community connection. The challenge involved developing professional independence and confidence, while honoring family relationships and cultural heritage in ways that could support both individual achievement and collective family advancement. This balance required sophisticated understanding of multiple value systems and strategic communication that could bridge different cultural and professional contexts. Recognition within academic and professional legal communities followed patterns that differed significantly from family evaluation criteria and created opportunities for validation that transcended cultural limitations or linguistic assumptions. Understanding these recognition systems provided insights into how professional advancement operated within federal legal institutions and specialized practice areas. Legal scholarship and academic publication represented one avenue for professional recognition that rewarded analytical sophistication and original research regardless of author background or linguistic characteristics. My contributions to law review publications and academic conferences had generated interest from legal scholars and practitioners who evaluated work based entirely on intellectual merit and practical significance. Federal court practice created additional recognition opportunities through the quality of legal research, writing, and analysis that contributed to judicial decision-making and precedent development. Attorneys who practiced appellate law before federal courts recognized competence through work product rather than personal characteristics, creating professional relationships based on demonstrated capability and mutual respect. Professional organizations focused on constitutional law and appellate advocacy provided platforms for recognition through speaking engagements, leadership positions, and committee service that showcased expertise while building networks within specialized legal communities. These opportunities created visibility among practitioners and scholars who might provide future career advancement or collaboration possibilities. Judicial mentorship represented particularly valuable recognition that carried significant weight throughout the legal profession. Justice Williams' confidence in my capabilities and her willingness to provide professional references and career guidance reflected evaluation based on proven performance rather than assumptions about potential limitations or appropriate career boundaries. Awards and honors from professional legal organizations acknowledged achievement based on objective criteria related to legal competence and professional contribution, rather than cultural background or personal characteristics. These recognitions provided external validation that could counter family assumptions while establishing credibility within broader professional communities. Client feedback and peer evaluation within federal court practice focused on results achieved and quality of legal representation provided rather than personal characteristics or communication style. This professional evaluation system rewarded excellence in legal analysis and advocacy, while minimizing the significance of factors that family members seem to consider relevant to professional success. Academic conference presentations and scholarly publication opportunities created additional platforms for professional recognition that could establish national reputation and influence within specialized areas of constitutional law and federal court practice. These achievements provided concrete evidence of professional capability that exceeded anything family members had imagined possible. The accumulation of professional recognition from multiple sources created a portfolio of achievements that demonstrated capability at the highest levels of legal practice, while providing security and confidence that could support independent career decision-making regardless of family approval or understanding. Professional advancement within federal legal practice required strategic positioning that could maximize competitive advantages while building upon specialized expertise and established relationships developed through judicial clerkship experience. This strategic development demanded careful analysis of market opportunities, institutional dynamics, and long-term career objectives that aligned with personal values and professional capabilities. Constitutional law expertise represented a specialized practice area with limited competition and strong demand from clients facing complex federal litigation challenges. The combination of practical federal court experience and proven research capabilities positioned me advantageously for opportunities within this specialized market segment. Appellate advocacy skills developed through judicial clerkship experience provided additional competitive advantages for positions requiring sophisticated legal writing and oral argument capabilities. These skills were particularly valuable for law firms handling complex federal appeals and constitutional challenges that demanded exceptional legal analysis and presentation abilities. Professional relationships developed within the federal judiciary and appellate bar created access to opportunities that would not be available through traditional job search processes. These network connections provided insights into upcoming positions, client needs, and market developments that could inform strategic career planning and opportunity identification. Academic credentials combined with practical federal court experience created unique positioning for opportunities that required both scholarly capability and proven legal practice skills. This combination was particularly valuable for positions involving legal education, policy development, or public interest advocacy that demanded both theoretical understanding and practical application experience. Language skills and cultural competency provided additional competitive advantages for clients requiring sophisticated legal representation in cases involving constitutional challenges to language policies or discrimination claims based on national origin characteristics. This expertise created market opportunities that other attorneys could not adequately address. Justice Williams' mentorship and professional endorsement represented valuable positioning assets that could influence career opportunities throughout the federal legal community. Her recommendation carried weight that could overcome potential obstacles while providing credibility that would support advanced career positioning regardless of client or employer preferences. Publication record and speaking experience created additional positioning advantages through established reputation within academic and professional legal communities. These credentials demonstrated thought leadership and expertise that could attract sophisticated clients and career opportunities, requiring proven intellectual capability. The strategic combination of specialized expertise, practical experience, professional relationships, and established reputation created positioning that exceeded what most recent law school graduates could achieve through traditional career paths. This competitive advantage provided security and confidence for pursuing opportunities that aligned with professional objectives and personal values. Managing family expectations while pursuing professional objectives that exceeded their understanding or approval required sophisticated communication strategies and careful boundary maintenance that could preserve relationships while protecting career advancement opportunities. These dynamics created ongoing tension that demanded strategic navigation and emotional resilience. Uncle Richard's continued assumptions about appropriate professional boundaries for my career reflected his limited understanding of the opportunities that federal judicial experience had created, and the market value of constitutional law expertise within contemporary legal practice. His suggestions about immigration law specialization demonstrated inability to recognize the breadth of career options available to attorneys with my credentials and experience. Family discussions about my professional future consistently underestimated both my achievements and my potential, creating frustrating conversations that required patience and strategic communication to avoid direct confrontation while maintaining professional independence. These interactions revealed the persistence of assumptions based on cultural stereotypes, rather than actual capability or demonstrated performance. The pressure to seek family approval for career decisions conflicted with professional advice from Justice Williams and other mentors who encouraged independent decision-making based on market opportunities and personal objectives, rather than family consensus or cultural expectations about appropriate professional roles. Patricia's competitive comments about our respective career paths reflected her own insecurity about professional positioning, combined with family dynamics that had always positioned her as the designated success story who would inherit professional opportunities and family approval. Her engagement and upcoming marriage provided additional context for family gathering dynamics that would influence reunion interactions. Maintaining respectful relationships with family members who consistently underestimated my capabilities required emotional discipline and strategic communication that could acknowledge their concern while protecting my professional autonomy and career development opportunities. This balance demanded ongoing attention to family harmony without sacrificing professional advancement. The approaching family reunion represented both opportunity and challenge for addressing these dynamics in a public setting where family hierarchy and professional achievement would be displayed and evaluated by extended family members and family friends who had observed my development over decades. Cultural expectations about appropriate professional behavior and family loyalty created additional complexity for managing relationships while pursuing career objectives that might appear inconsistent with traditional values about collective decision-making and deference to established family authority figures. The tension between authentic professional achievement and family approval created internal conflict that required resolution through demonstrated capability, rather than defensive argument or emotional confrontation. This approach demanded confidence in my own judgment, combined with respect for family relationships and cultural values that remained important for personal identity. Building professional relationships that could support long-term career advancement required strategic networking that extended beyond immediate judicial clerkship connections to encompass broader legal communities focused on constitutional advocacy, appellate practice, and public interest litigation. This network development demanded ongoing attention to relationship building and professional positioning within multiple communities of practice. Bar association involvement provided opportunities for leadership development and professional visibility within organizations focused on constitutional law, appellate practice, and diversity issues affecting the legal profession. These activities created platforms for demonstrating expertise while building relationships with attorneys from diverse practice settings and professional backgrounds. Academic conference participation allowed for continued engagement with legal scholars and policy researchers working on constitutional issues and federal court practice. These relationships provided opportunities for collaborative research projects and scholarly publication that could advance both academic reputation and practical career objectives. Professional mentorship relationships extended beyond Justice Williams to include other federal judges, experienced appellate practitioners, and public interest attorneys who could provide guidance about different career paths and opportunity identification. These mentoring connections created access to insights and advice that could inform strategic career planning. Client development activities within appropriate professional contexts provided opportunities to build reputation and demonstrate capability, while establishing relationships that could support future practice development. These activities required careful attention to professional responsibility requirements while building market position and client confidence. Speaking engagement opportunities at continuing legal education programs and professional conferences created visibility within legal communities while establishing reputation as a thought leader and expert in specialized practice areas. These presentations provided platforms for sharing expertise while building professional relationships and market recognition. Professional organization leadership positions offered opportunities for skill development and network building while contributing to the advancement of legal practice and professional development within specialized areas of constitutional law and federal court advocacy. The strategic combination of relationship-building activities created a comprehensive network of professional connections that could support various career pathways while providing security and opportunity identification, regardless of specific career decisions or market developments that might affect individual opportunities. Throughout this period of professional development and strategic positioning, I had been accumulating achievements and recognition that remained largely invisible to family members, who continued to base their expectations on outdated assumptions about my capabilities and career trajectory. This hidden achievement portfolio would soon provide the foundation for a dramatic revelation that would permanently alter family dynamics and professional positioning. Federal judicial opinions incorporating my research and analysis had established binding precedent throughout the Seventh Circuit, while contributing to constitutional law development in areas affecting language rights and procedural due process. These published decisions represented permanent contributions to American jurisprudence that carried my analytical fingerprints even when my direct contribution remained invisible to casual observers. Professional recognition from appellate attorneys and constitutional law scholars had generated speaking invitations, publication opportunities, and consulting requests that reflected growing reputation within specialized legal communities. These professional relationships provided concrete validation of capability that exceeded anything family members imagined I had achieved. Academic publication credits and scholarly conference presentations had established national visibility within constitutional law and federal court practice communities. These credentials demonstrated intellectual leadership and practical expertise that positioned me among the most accomplished recent law school graduates entering specialized legal practice. Client development success and professional positioning within competitive legal markets had created opportunities for advanced career placement that would soon surprise family members who continued to assume my professional options were limited to community legal services or immigration law practice, focused on serving other Latino families. The letter that would soon shock the family reunion represented the culmination of strategic career development and professional achievement that had been progressing quietly while family members remained focused on surface characteristics rather than substantive accomplishment and market positioning. Justice Williams' recommendation and professional endorsement had created access to career opportunities that few attorneys achieve, regardless of background or personal characteristics. Her confidence in my capabilities reflected proven performance at the highest levels of federal legal practice. The contrast between family assumptions about my limitations and the reality of professional achievement and opportunity would soon create a moment of revelation that would forever change how extended family members understood both my capabilities and the appropriate boundaries of their cultural expectations and professional evaluation criteria. The notification arrived through Justice Williams' chambers on a February morning when Chicago's winter winds howled through the federal courthouse corridors with particular intensity. The Supreme Court of the United States was seeking amicus curiae brief submissions for a case that would determine the constitutional boundaries of language accommodation requirements in federal administrative proceedings. This opportunity represented the intersection of my specialized expertise, professional positioning, and strategic career objectives in ways that would prove transformative for both my professional trajectory and my family's understanding of my capabilities. The case, Martinez v. Department of Homeland Security, centered on constitutional challenges to federal agency policies that required English-only communications in immigration enforcement proceedings. The legal questions involved fundamental issues of due process, equal protection, and administrative law that directly aligned with the constitutional expertise I had developed during my federal judicial clerkship, while addressing practical concerns that resonated with my personal understanding of language discrimination challenges. Justice Williams recognized the strategic significance of this opportunity for my professional development and encouraged me to consider submitting an amicus brief that could showcase my analytical capabilities while contributing meaningfully to constitutional discourse at the highest level of American jurisprudence. The Supreme Court's consideration of amicus submissions provided a pathway for demonstrating expertise that would establish national recognition within constitutional law communities. The decision to pursue this opportunity required careful consideration of the substantial research and writing demands involved in Supreme Court brief preparation, the professional risks associated with submitting work for evaluation by the nation's highest court, and the potential career benefits that could result from successful contribution to Supreme Court constitutional analysis. The research phase demanded comprehensive examination of constitutional precedent, federal administrative law, and empirical studies regarding language accommodation effectiveness in governmental proceedings. This analytical work required synthesis of materials from multiple legal disciplines while maintaining the precision and clarity necessary for Supreme Court consideration. Justice Williams provided guidance about Supreme Court brief writing conventions and analytical standards, while emphasizing the importance of original legal reasoning that could contribute fresh perspective to constitutional questions that had been debated in lower courts without definitive resolution. Her mentorship proved invaluable for understanding the strategic considerations that influenced effective Supreme Court advocacy. The opportunity represented my first independent legal project that would operate entirely outside the protective environment of judicial chambers, while subjecting my work to evaluation by Supreme Court justices, constitutional law scholars, and the broader federal appellate community. This professional exposure created both extraordinary opportunity and significant risk that required careful preparation and strategic execution. My parents understood that I was working on an important legal project, but could not fully comprehend the significance of Supreme Court submission within American legal institutions. Their support remained unconditional and encouraging, though it was grounded in faith and love, rather than professional understanding of the achievement this opportunity represented. The constitutional analysis required for Supreme Court brief preparation demanded comprehensive examination of due process jurisprudence spanning over 2 centuries of American constitutional development. The 5th and 14th Amendments' due process clauses had generated extensive precedent regarding procedural protections required when governmental action affected individual rights. But the specific application to language accommodation remained unsettled across different circuit courts. The research process revealed significant inconsistency in how federal courts had approached language accommodation requirements in administrative proceedings. Some circuits applied heightened constitutional scrutiny when government policies created barriers to meaningful participation based on English proficiency, while others deferred to administrative efficiency arguments and limited constitutional protections to situations involving criminal prosecution rather than civil enforcement proceedings. This circuit split created the precise legal landscape that often prompted Supreme Court intervention to establish uniform constitutional standards that could guide federal courts and administrative agencies throughout the nation. The court's interest in the Martinez case suggested recognition that existing precedent provided insufficient guidance for resolving these constitutional questions consistently. Equal protection analysis required examination of how language-based governmental policies affected different population groups, and whether such policies satisfied constitutional requirements for neutral application and legitimate governmental purposes. The constitutional standards for evaluating policies that disproportionately affected non-English speakers remained unclear, creating opportunities for legal argument about appropriate levels of judicial scrutiny. Administrative law considerations involved analysis of how constitutional requirements intersected with federal agency authority and practical constraints on governmental operations. The balance between constitutional protections and administrative efficiency represented a recurring theme in Supreme Court jurisprudence that required careful attention to precedent establishing appropriate boundaries between individual rights and governmental operations. International comparative analysis provided additional perspective on how other constitutional democracies addressed language accommodation in governmental proceedings. While foreign precedent was not binding on American constitutional interpretation, comparative analysis could inform understanding of practical implementation approaches and constitutional principles that supported effective language accommodation policies. Empirical research regarding the effectiveness of different language accommodation approaches provided factual foundation for constitutional arguments about the practical impact of various policy approaches on affected individuals and administrative operations. This research required synthesis of social science data with legal analysis to support constitutional arguments with concrete evidence about real-world consequences. The integration of these diverse research materials into coherent constitutional analysis demanded sophisticated legal reasoning that could synthesize complex precedent while presenting original arguments that contributed meaningfully to Supreme Court constitutional discourse. This analytical challenge required capabilities that exceeded traditional law school preparation while building upon the research skills I had developed during my federal judicial clerkship. Supreme Court brief writing demanded precision, clarity, and analytical sophistication that exceeded any legal writing I had previously undertaken. The document needed to communicate complex constitutional arguments to justices with diverse judicial philosophies while presenting legal reasoning that could influence precedent affecting millions of Americans facing language barriers in federal administrative proceedings. The opening statement required immediate establishment of the constitutional significance of the issues presented while articulating the specific legal questions that warranted Supreme Court resolution. This introduction needed to capture the court's attention, while demonstrating the broader implications that extended beyond the immediate parties to affect fundamental questions of constitutional interpretation and governmental authority. Constitutional argument development required careful progression through precedential analysis that could establish the legal foundation for my position, while distinguishing contrary authority and addressing potential counterarguments that opposing parties might advance. This analytical structure demanded comprehensive understanding of Supreme Court constitutional methodology and strategic anticipation of judicial concerns. The due process analysis centered on establishing that meaningful participation in administrative proceedings required language accommodation when individual rights or interests were at stake. This argument required synthesis of procedural due process precedent with practical analysis of how language barriers affected individual ability to understand proceedings and respond effectively to governmental action. Equal protection arguments focused on demonstrating that policies requiring English-only communications in federal proceedings created discriminatory effects that violated constitutional principles of neutral governmental treatment. This analysis required careful attention to Supreme Court precedent regarding facially neutral policies that produce disparate impacts on protected population groups. Administrative law sections address the intersection between constitutional requirements and federal agency authority, while proposing implementation approaches that could satisfy constitutional mandates without creating undue administrative burdens. This analysis required balance between constitutional principles and practical governmental operations that could withstand judicial scrutiny. The conclusion needed to articulate specific relief requested while demonstrating how the proposed constitutional interpretation would advance both individual rights and effective governmental administration. This section required strategic presentation of the broader implications that Supreme Court resolution could have for federal administrative practice throughout the government. The editing and revision process involved multiple drafts that refined legal reasoning, improved clarity of presentation, and strengthened constitutional arguments through more precise analysis and more effective integration of supporting authority. Justice Williams provided invaluable feedback during this revision process, while maintaining appropriate boundaries regarding her own judicial responsibilities. The Supreme Court brief submission required strategic activation of the professional network I had developed during my federal judicial clerkship to secure endorsements, gather supporting materials, and build credibility for the constitutional arguments I was advancing. This networking effort represented my first independent professional project that relied entirely on relationships and reputation I had established through demonstrated capability rather than institutional affiliation. Former federal law clerks who had transitioned to Supreme Court practice provided insights about brief writing strategy, submission procedures, and the analytical approaches that proved most effective for capturing judicial attention. These conversations revealed the competitive landscape surrounding Supreme Court advocacy, while providing practical guidance about positioning arguments for maximum impact. Constitutional law professors at leading academic institutions offered to review drafts and provide scholarly perspective on the legal arguments I was developing. Their feedback proved invaluable for strengthening analytical foundations while ensuring that my constitutional interpretation aligned with broader academic discourse about due process and equal protection principles. Public interest organizations focused on civil rights and language access issues expressed interest in supporting the brief submission through organizational endorsements and resource sharing. These partnerships provided additional credibility while demonstrating the practical significance of the constitutional questions for affected communities throughout the nation. Professional legal organizations representing attorneys who practiced immigration and administrative law indicated willingness to coordinate their own amicus submissions to complement the constitutional analysis I was providing. This coordination created opportunities for comprehensive legal argument that addressed multiple aspects of the constitutional questions from different professional perspectives. The American Bar Association's relevant committees provided feedback on the practical implications of different constitutional interpretations for federal administrative practice. Their insights helped refine arguments about implementation approaches while strengthening the brief's analysis of how constitutional requirements could be satisfied without disrupting essential governmental operations. Federal court clerks from other circuits shared research materials and analytical insights that strengthened the brief's treatment of circuit split issues and comparative analysis of different judicial approaches to language accommodation questions. This collaboration provided comprehensive understanding of how federal courts throughout the nation had addressed similar constitutional challenges. The professional support and collaboration that emerged during this process provided concrete validation of the reputation and relationships I had developed during my federal judicial service. The willingness of experienced attorneys and legal scholars to invest time and resources in supporting my Supreme Court submission reflected recognition of both the quality of my legal analysis and the significance of the constitutional issues I was addressing. The intensive demands of Supreme Court brief preparation required careful management of family relationships and expectations during a period when my professional focus necessarily limited availability for traditional family obligations and social interactions. These dynamics created additional complexity for maintaining family harmony while pursuing extraordinary professional opportunities that family members could not fully understand or appreciate. Uncle Richard's inquiries about my post-clerkship activities reflected continued assumptions about appropriate career trajectories and professional opportunities available to someone with my background. His suggestions about establishing an immigration law practice or pursuing positions with community legal organizations demonstrated persistent inability to recognize the scope of opportunities that federal judicial experience had created. Conversations with family members about my current work required careful explanation of Supreme Court procedures and constitutional law concepts that exceeded their understanding of American legal institutions. These discussions revealed the gap between my professional development and family comprehension while highlighting the need for strategic communication that could maintain relationships without compromising professional focus. Patricia's competitive comments about our respective career developments reflected her own uncertainty about how federal judicial experience compared with corporate law practice in terms of prestige, career advancement potential, and long-term professional positioning. Her engagement preparations created additional family dynamics that influenced how professional achievements were discussed and evaluated within family contexts. My parents' pride in my professional work remained unconditional and encouraging, though it was necessarily based on faith and trust rather than detailed understanding of Supreme Court significance within American legal institutions. Their support provided emotional foundation that sustained intensive work demands while maintaining connection to family values and cultural heritage. The time demands associated with Supreme Court brief preparation required strategic management of family obligations and social expectations, during a period when professional focus necessarily took precedence over traditional family participation. This prioritization required diplomatic explanation and boundary maintenance that could preserve relationships while protecting project completion. Extended family members who learned about my Supreme Court work through family conversations expressed various reactions, ranging from amazement to skepticism, about whether someone with my background could successfully contribute to the nation's highest court. These responses reflected persistent assumptions about professional limitations while revealing the significance of the achievement I was pursuing. The contrast between family assumptions about my capabilities and the reality of Supreme Court opportunity created internal tension that required resolution through demonstrated achievement rather than defensive argument. This approach demanded confidence in professional judgment, combined with patience regarding family understanding and recognition. The Supreme Court brief submission process required meticulous attention to procedural requirements, formatting specifications, and filing deadlines that reflected the institutional formality and precision demanded by the nation's highest court. This administrative complexity represented the final stage of months of intensive research and writing, while creating the formal record that would subject my constitutional analysis to evaluation by Supreme Court justices and the broader legal community. The brief filing generated immediate interest within constitutional law communities that regularly monitored Supreme Court dockets for significant cases and novel legal arguments. Legal scholars and practitioners who specialized in due process and equal protection analysis noted the fresh perspective and comprehensive treatment of circuit-split issues that my submission provided. Professional legal publications covering Supreme Court practice reported on the brief submission, while highlighting the significance of having a recent federal law clerk contribute independently to constitutional discourse at the Supreme Court level. These publications recognized both the quality of legal analysis and the unusual achievement of independent Supreme Court participation so early in a legal career. Academic constitutional law professors incorporated the brief into class discussions and scholarly analysis of pending Supreme Court cases. Their attention provided additional validation of the legal reasoning while demonstrating the contribution that my constitutional analysis was making to broader academic discourse about language rights and administrative due process. Public interest organizations focused on language access and civil rights issues promoted the brief submission through their professional networks and community outreach efforts. Their support demonstrated the practical significance of the constitutional questions while building visibility for the legal arguments among affected communities and advocacy organizations. Federal court clerks throughout the country noted the brief submission as an example of how judicial clerkship experience could support independent constitutional advocacy and professional development. Their recognition reflected understanding of both the analytical capabilities required and the professional courage necessary for independent Supreme Court participation. The Supreme Court's acknowledgement of the brief submission and its inclusion in official case materials provided formal validation that my constitutional analysis met institutional standards while contributing meaningfully to the legal questions under consideration. This recognition represented achievement at the highest level of American legal institutions. Media coverage of Supreme Court cases began referencing arguments from my brief when discussing the constitutional issues involved in the language accommodation debate. This attention provided public recognition for the legal reasoning, while demonstrating the broader impact that constitutional advocacy could have on public discourse about governmental policies affecting linguistic minorities. The Supreme Court brief submission catalyzed recognition within legal communities that accelerated career opportunities and professional positioning beyond what I could have achieved through traditional practice development or institutional advancement. This recognition reflected both the quality of constitutional analysis and the strategic significance of independent contribution to Supreme Court constitutional discourse. Leading law firms specializing in appellate practice and constitutional litigation initiated contact about potential associate positions that would utilize the specialized expertise and Supreme Court experience that my brief submission demonstrated. These opportunities represented immediate access to sophisticated legal practice without traditional entry-level requirements or extended training periods. Public interest organizations focused on constitutional advocacy and civil rights litigation offered positions that would allow continued work on language access and due process issues while providing platforms for broader constitutional advocacy. These opportunities aligned with both professional interests and personal values, while offering career paths that combined legal excellence with social impact. Academic institutions expressed interest in visiting lecturer positions and adjunct faculty opportunities that would allow sharing of Supreme Court experience and constitutional expertise with law students. These academic opportunities provided additional career options while contributing to legal education and constitutional scholarship. Government agencies and departments requiring constitutional law expertise indicated interest in senior attorney positions, that would utilize Supreme Court experience and specialized knowledge of administrative due process issues. These opportunities provided pathways for influencing legal policy development while serving broader public interests. Professional speaking engagements at Bar Association conferences and continuing legal education programs created additional opportunities for sharing constitutional expertise while building recognition within legal communities focused on federal court practice and constitutional advocacy. These presentations showcased analytical capabilities while expanding professional networks. Legal scholarship opportunities emerged through invitations to contribute to law reviews and constitutional law publications, interested in articles based on the research and analysis that supported the Supreme Court brief submission. These publications provided platforms for continued contribution to constitutional discourse while establishing academic credibility. The acceleration of professional recognition and opportunity creation demonstrated how strategic career positioning and exceptional achievement could compress traditional advancement timelines while creating access to opportunities typically reserved for attorneys with decades of experience and established practice reputations. The success of my Supreme Court brief submission created professional positioning that fundamentally altered career trajectories and opportunity landscapes in ways that would soon surprise family members who continued to base expectations on outdated assumptions about my capabilities and appropriate professional boundaries. This achievement represented validation of strategic career development while providing foundation for continued advancement at the highest levels of legal practice. The constitutional expertise demonstrated through Supreme Court contribution established specialized credentials that differentiated my professional profile from other recent law school graduates, while creating market positioning that commanded attention from elite legal employers and sophisticated clients requiring constitutional advocacy capabilities. Professional relationships developed through the brief submission process provided access to networks of Supreme Court practitioners, constitutional law scholars, and appellate advocates who could support future career advancement while offering collaboration opportunities on complex federal cases requiring specialized expertise and proven analytical capabilities. The reputation established through independent Supreme Court participation created credibility that would support client development and professional advancement regardless of specific career path selection. This credibility provided security and flexibility for pursuing opportunities that aligned with personal values and professional objectives, without requiring compromise regarding institutional affiliation or practice area specialization. Justice Williams' recognition of my achievement and her willingness to provide enhanced professional references reflected validation from the highest levels of federal judicial service. Her endorsement carried weight throughout legal institutions while providing access to opportunities that would not be available through traditional career development approaches. Academic recognition from constitutional law scholars and legal education institutions provided additional career options while establishing scholarly credentials that could support future publication and research opportunities. This academic positioning created alternatives to traditional practice while maintaining connection to constitutional discourse and legal education. The financial opportunities associated with elite legal practice or specialized constitutional advocacy provided economic security that exceeded anything family members had imagined possible, while creating independence that would support strategic career decision-making based on professional objectives rather than external expectations or approval seeking. The contrast between family assumptions about my professional limitations and the reality of Supreme Court achievement and recognition created the foundation for a dramatic revelation that would permanently alter family dynamics and professional positioning within extended family relationships. The Supreme Court's unanimous decision in Martinez v. Department of Homeland Security represented vindication that exceeded my most optimistic expectations, while establishing constitutional precedent that would influence federal administrative practice for decades to come. The court adopted several key arguments from my amicus brief, incorporating my analysis of due process requirements and equal protection principles into binding constitutional doctrine that mandated meaningful language accommodation in federal administrative proceedings. Justice Roberts, writing for the court, specifically cited the constitutional framework I had developed for analyzing language accommodation requirements under the Due Process Clause. The opinion referenced my research regarding circuit court inconsistencies, and adopted the analytical approach I had proposed for resolving conflicts between constitutional protections and administrative efficiency concerns. This direct incorporation of my legal reasoning into Supreme Court precedent represented achievement that established permanent contribution to American constitutional jurisprudence. The constitutional standard established by the court required federal agencies to provide meaningful language accommodation whenever administrative proceedings could result in significant deprivation of individual rights or interests. This standard adopted the functional approach I had advocated, focusing on practical impact rather than formal procedural categories when determining constitutional requirements for language access in governmental proceedings. Professional legal publications covering Supreme Court practice highlighted the significance of having constitutional arguments from an independent amicus brief incorporated into binding precedent. Legal scholars noted the sophisticated analysis and fresh perspective that my submission had provided, recognizing both the quality of constitutional reasoning and the strategic importance of the issues addressed. The decision generated immediate implementation requirements throughout federal administrative agencies, creating substantial demand for constitutional expertise and compliance guidance that positioned me advantageously for consulting opportunities and specialized practice development. Federal agencies required assistance understanding the new constitutional mandates while developing policies that could satisfy judicial scrutiny. Academic constitutional law programs incorporated the Martinez decision into their curricula, with several professors requesting permission to use excerpts from my amicus brief as teaching materials for courses addressing due process and equal protection analysis. This educational adoption provided additional validation while contributing to the development of future constitutional lawyers. The professional recognition generated by Supreme Court citation created opportunities that transcended traditional career advancement timelines. Major law firms, government agencies, and public interest organizations recognized the specialized expertise and proven analytical capabilities that Supreme Court success demonstrated, offering positions that would typically require years of practice development and reputation building. My parents celebrated the achievement with characteristic pride and unconditional support, though their understanding remained necessarily limited by their distance from American legal institutions. Their joy reflected recognition that their daughter had accomplished something extraordinary, even without complete comprehension of the Supreme Court's significance within constitutional governance structures. Williams & Connolly, one of the nation's most prestigious litigation firms, initiated contact within days of the Supreme Court decision through their appellate practice group, which specialized in constitutional advocacy and complex federal litigation. The firm's reputation for handling only the most sophisticated legal matters and representing clients in high-stakes constitutional challenges aligned perfectly with my developing expertise and professional aspirations. The recruitment process began with informal conversations designed to assess mutual interest and cultural compatibility. Senior partner Margaret Williams, who had argued numerous cases before the Supreme Court, expressed particular interest in my constitutional analysis and the innovative legal reasoning that had influenced the Martinez decision. Her recognition of my analytical capabilities transcended any consideration of background characteristics or linguistic features. The firm's appellate practice group handled constitutional challenges for Fortune 500 corporations facing regulatory enforcement actions, civil rights organizations pursuing systemic litigation, and individual clients whose cases raised significant federal constitutional questions. This practice area required attorneys who could navigate complex constitutional doctrine while developing strategic approaches to novel legal questions. Partner interviews revealed the firm's commitment to intellectual excellence and strategic thinking that prioritized legal reasoning capabilities over traditional credentials or institutional pedigree. The partners evaluated analytical skills, constitutional expertise, and potential for independent contribution to sophisticated legal practice rather than focusing on conventional career progression markers. The compensation structure offered reflected the firm's recognition of specialized constitutional expertise and the market value of Supreme Court experience. The financial package exceeded typical entry-level associate positions while providing immediate partnership track consideration based on demonstrated capability rather than traditional advancement timelines. Professional development opportunities included direct client responsibility for constitutional matters, collaboration with senior partners on Supreme Court cases, and leadership roles in complex federal litigation requiring sophisticated legal analysis and strategic case development. These opportunities represented immediate access to the highest levels of legal practice. The firm's client base included technology companies facing First Amendment challenges, healthcare organizations confronting regulatory enforcement actions, and civil rights groups pursuing constitutional litigation that could establish precedent affecting vulnerable populations. This diverse representation aligned with my interests in using constitutional expertise to address systemic inequalities. Williams & Connolly's commitment to pro bono constitutional advocacy provided additional opportunities for meaningful legal work that advanced social justice objectives, while maintaining the intellectual rigor and professional excellence that characterized the firm's approach to all legal representation. Recognition of the growing demand for specialized constitutional expertise in federal administrative compliance created opportunities for developing educational and consulting services that could serve governmental agencies, private organizations, and legal practitioners, requiring guidance on language accommodation requirements and related constitutional mandates. The Constitutional Law Institute emerged from collaborations with legal scholars, federal court practitioners, and public policy experts who recognized the need for comprehensive training programs addressing constitutional compliance in diverse institutional contexts. This initiative represented entrepreneurial application of specialized expertise while serving broader educational and public service objectives. The Institute's curriculum development required synthesis of constitutional doctrine, practical implementation guidance, and case study analysis that could serve attorneys, administrators, and policy professionals working in organizations affected by federal constitutional requirements. This educational content demanded translation of complex legal concepts into accessible professional training materials. Faculty recruitment attracted constitutional law professors, former federal law clerks, and experienced practitioners who could contribute expertise in different aspects of constitutional compliance and federal administrative practice. This collaborative approach created comprehensive educational programming that addressed theoretical foundations and practical applications. Professional partnerships with bar associations, continuing legal education providers, and governmental training organizations created distribution channels for constitutional compliance education, while building recognition for the Institute's expertise and educational effectiveness. These partnerships provided sustainable revenue streams while advancing broader professional development objectives. Corporate clients requiring constitutional compliance training included multinational corporations with diverse workforces, healthcare systems serving multilingual populations, and technology companies facing federal regulatory scrutiny regarding language access policies. These engagements provided practical experience in constitutional implementation while generating substantial consulting revenue. Government agency partnerships focused on developing constitutional compliance frameworks that could satisfy judicial requirements while maintaining operational efficiency. These collaborations provided insights into federal administrative challenges while contributing to effective implementation of constitutional mandates across governmental institutions. Academic affiliations with law schools and public policy programs created additional opportunities for scholarly collaboration and curriculum development, while establishing institutional relationships that could support long-term professional development and continued contribution to constitutional scholarship. The Supreme Court's success generated significant media attention that created platforms for public education about constitutional issues while establishing recognition as a leading expert on language rights and federal administrative law. This visibility provided opportunities for broader impact beyond traditional legal practice while building reputation that would support diverse career objectives. National Public Radio featured interviews discussing the Martinez decision and its implications for federal administrative practice. These appearances provided opportunities to explain complex constitutional concepts to general audiences, while demonstrating the practical significance of constitutional protections for individuals facing language barriers in governmental proceedings. Legal periodicals and constitutional law journals requested articles analyzing the Martinez decision and its broader implications for due process jurisprudence. These publications provided platforms for continued contribution to constitutional scholarship while establishing credentials within academic and professional legal communities. Congressional testimony opportunities emerged through legislative committees examining federal agency compliance with constitutional requirements. These appearances provided direct input into federal policy development while demonstrating expertise to governmental decision-makers responsible for administrative law reform. Professional conference presentations at National Bar Association meetings and academic symposiums created additional platforms for sharing constitutional expertise while building recognition within legal communities focused on federal court practice and constitutional advocacy. Television appearances on legal news programs provided opportunities to discuss constitutional developments affecting administrative law and federal regulatory practice. These media engagements reached broader professional audiences while establishing recognition as an authoritative source for constitutional analysis. Editorial contributions to major newspapers addressed constitutional issues affecting immigrant communities and language minorities, connecting specialized legal expertise with broader public policy discussions. These publications demonstrated commitment to using constitutional knowledge for public education and social advocacy. The thought leadership recognition generated through media engagement created opportunities for consulting relationships with policy organizations, academic institutions, and governmental agencies requiring constitutional expertise for strategic planning and compliance development initiatives. The visibility and recognition generated by Supreme Court success accelerated network development beyond traditional legal communities to encompass policy researchers, academic institutions, advocacy organizations, and international human rights groups working on language access and constitutional protection issues. The American Bar Association invited participation in committees focused on constitutional law development and federal court practice improvement. These leadership opportunities provided platforms for influencing professional standards while building relationships with attorneys practicing at the highest levels of federal litigation. International human rights organizations expressed interest in collaboration on comparative constitutional analysis and cross-border advocacy regarding language rights in governmental proceedings. These partnerships provided opportunities for global perspective on constitutional issues while contributing to international human rights development. Academic research collaborations with constitutional law scholars at leading universities created opportunities for joint scholarship and policy analysis that could influence both legal doctrine and practical implementation of constitutional requirements. These partnerships combined theoretical expertise with practical experience for comprehensive constitutional research. Public interest law organizations focused on civil rights advocacy sought partnerships for strategic litigation that could advance constitutional protections for linguistic minorities and immigrant communities. These collaborations aligned with personal values while providing opportunities for meaningful constitutional advocacy. Corporate diversity and inclusion consulting emerged as an unexpected application of constitutional expertise, as organizations sought guidance on developing policies that could satisfy legal requirements while promoting inclusive workplace cultures. These engagements provided substantial revenue while advancing broader social objectives. Government relations consulting opportunities developed through recognition of expertise in federal administrative law and constitutional compliance. These engagements provided input into policy development while building relationships with governmental decision-makers responsible for regulatory implementation. The strategic partnership development created comprehensive professional positioning that could support diverse career objectives while maintaining focus on constitutional expertise and meaningful contribution to legal and policy development that advanced social justice and individual rights protection. The combination of elite law firm compensation, constitutional consulting revenue, and speaking engagement fees created financial security that exceeded any expectations my family had held regarding potential career outcomes. This economic independence provided foundation for strategic career decision-making based on professional objectives and personal values, rather than external approval or financial pressure. The Williams & Connolly associate position provided base compensation that reflected market recognition of specialized constitutional expertise and Supreme Court experience. The partnership track consideration offered long-term earning potential that positioned me among the highest compensated attorneys in constitutional practice. Constitutional consulting through the Institute generated additional revenue streams that diversified income sources while building independent practice capabilities that could support entrepreneurial career development. These engagements provided both financial returns and professional satisfaction. through meaningful contribution to constitutional compliance and legal education. Speaking engagement honoraria from academic conferences, professional associations, and corporate training programs created supplementary income that reflected market value of constitutional expertise and communication capabilities. These engagements provided both financial benefits and professional recognition within diverse professional communities. Publication royalties from law review articles and constitutional analysis contributed additional revenue while establishing long-term income potential through continued scholarly contribution. These publications provided both immediate financial returns and ongoing professional credibility through academic recognition. The financial positioning created opportunities for strategic philanthropy and community investment that could advance social justice objectives while building reputation within advocacy communities. This charitable capacity provided platforms for meaningful contribution beyond direct legal practice. Investment opportunities in legal technology and constitutional advocacy organizations provided both financial returns and strategic positioning within emerging markets related to legal services and constitutional compliance. These investments demonstrated sophisticated understanding of legal industry development while generating long-term wealth accumulation. The economic security created independence from family financial support or approval while providing resources for continued professional development, advanced education, or entrepreneurial ventures that aligned with personal values and career objectives. The approaching family reunion required careful consideration of how to present professional achievements and career development in ways that could educate family members about constitutional law practice, while managing competitive dynamics and cultural expectations that had historically influenced family relationships and professional evaluation. Uncle Richard's continued assumptions about appropriate career boundaries for someone with my background created ongoing tension that required strategic navigation. His suggestions about immigration law specialization demonstrated persistent inability to recognize the scope of opportunities that constitutional expertise and Supreme Court experience had created. The challenge involved communicating extraordinary professional achievement while maintaining family relationships and cultural connections that remained important for personal identity and community belonging. This balance required sophisticated cultural competency and strategic communication that could bridge different value systems and professional understanding levels. Patricia's upcoming wedding provided additional context for family gathering dynamics that would influence how professional achievements were discussed and evaluated within family social structures. Her engagement celebration created celebratory atmosphere that could either facilitate or complicate discussion of professional developments. My parents' pride in my achievements remained unconditional and supportive, though their understanding was necessarily limited by their distance from American legal institutions and constitutional law practice. Their joy provided emotional foundation that sustained professional focus while maintaining authentic cultural connections. Extended family members who learned about Supreme Court success through informal family communications expressed reactions ranging from amazement to skepticism about whether someone with my accent and background could achieve recognition at the highest levels of American legal institutions. The strategic communication planning involved developing approaches that could educate family members about constitutional law significance while demonstrating achieved excellence without appearing arrogant or dismissive of their concerns and perspectives. The preparation process required emotional resilience and strategic thinking that could manage competitive family dynamics while protecting professional achievements and maintaining authentic relationships with family members whose approval and recognition had historically been important for personal validation and community belonging. The accumulation of professional achievements during the months following Supreme Court success created a comprehensive portfolio that demonstrated excellence at the highest levels of constitutional practice while establishing credentials that exceeded typical career advancement timelines and traditional professional development patterns. The Supreme Court citation represented permanent contribution to American constitutional jurisprudence that would influence federal administrative practice for decades, while establishing national recognition within constitutional law communities and federal court practice specializations. Elite law firm partnership track positioning provided career security and advancement potential that reflected market recognition of specialized expertise and proven analytical capabilities. This professional positioning created long-term earning potential while providing access to sophisticated legal practice and prestigious client representation. Constitutional consulting success through the Institute demonstrated entrepreneurial capability and market recognition of educational expertise, while creating independent revenue streams that diversified professional positioning and provided foundation for continued business development. Media recognition as a constitutional thought leader established public credibility and professional visibility that transcended traditional legal practice boundaries, while providing platforms for continued contribution to constitutional discourse and public education. Academic recognition through scholarly publication and conference presentations created credibility within legal education communities, while establishing foundation for potential academic career development or continued scholarly contribution alongside practice activities. Professional network development encompassed relationships with Supreme Court practitioners, federal judges, constitutional law scholars, policy researchers, and advocacy organization leaders who could support continued career advancement while providing collaboration opportunities for meaningful constitutional work. The financial security created through diverse revenue streams provided independence and strategic flexibility for pursuing career opportunities based on professional objectives and personal values rather than external expectations or approval-seeking behavior. The achievement portfolio created foundation for dramatic family reunion revelation that would permanently alter family dynamics while demonstrating the contrast between assumed limitations and actual professional accomplishment at the highest levels of American legal institutions. The Harvard Law Review extended an unprecedented invitation for me to author the lead article for their Constitutional Law Symposium issue, focusing on the implications of the Martinez decision for federal administrative practice and due process jurisprudence. This opportunity represented the pinnacle of academic legal recognition, as the Harvard Law Review maintained the most selective publication standards in American legal scholarship and rarely invited contributions from attorneys with fewer than 10 years of specialized practice experience. The article proposal required comprehensive analysis of how the Supreme Court's adoption of my constitutional framework would influence federal administrative law development, procedural due process applications, and equal protection doctrine in governmental settings involving linguistic diversity. This analytical scope demanded synthesis of constitutional theory, practical implementation considerations, and empirical research regarding the effectiveness of different language accommodation approaches across federal agencies. The research process for this publication required examination of federal agency implementation efforts during the 6 months following the Martinez decision. This investigation revealed significant variation in how different agencies interpreted constitutional requirements, with some departments developing comprehensive language accommodation programs, while others maintained minimal compliance approaches that tested the boundaries of constitutional mandate interpretation. The writing process demanded precision in legal analysis that exceeded even Supreme Court brief requirements, as law review articles required exhaustive citation to supporting authority, comprehensive treatment of alternative interpretations, and original theoretical contributions that advanced constitutional scholarship beyond existing academic discourse. The Harvard Law Review editorial process maintained exacting standards that required multiple revisions and peer review evaluation. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.